All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And good evening, one and all, and welcome back to the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and for the next 2 hours, I'm your host and your guide as we together cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. until midnight right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, CFAJ-AM in St. Catharines, Ontario, that beams the wonderful signal from Classic 1220 across Ontario, the northern tiers of New York and Pennsylvania. And they also stream us at classic1220.ca. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, and on all social media sites, Xzone Radio TV. X-Zone Nation, this hour we have truly an enlightening guest joining us, Dr. Bob Thiel, a prominent figure in the biblical interpretation and the founder of the Continuing Church of God. With his extensive knowledge about biblical prophecy and health from a spiritual perspective, Dr. Thiel has dedicated his life to exploring the intersection of faith, scripture, and contemporary issues. His website, cogwriter.com, offers a wealth of information on subjects, and today he'll share an insight in what could inspire and challenging our understanding of faith in the modern world. So without further ado, let's dive into this engaging conversation with Dr. Bob Thiel. And Dr. Bob, welcome back to the X Zone.
Thanks for having me back, Rob.
Dr. Bob, what can you tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to establish Cogwriter?
Well, okay, with my background, let's see. I was born north of Canada. That's a typical joke I say because I was born in Detroit, so not too far from Ontario. Okay, I grew up in a Roman Catholic background. Mm-hmm. I went to Catholic school for a couple of years. I was confirmed as a Roman Catholic. My parents got estranged from the church for a while. And so I knew based on Roman Catholic doctrine that I was doomed. So I started to listen to Protestant radio. I got some ideas from there. I started to read the Bible. Decided that after a while, they weren't quite the way I should go. I was part of the Worldwide Church of God. I've got a reasonable amount of education. I have a master's from USC. I have a Ph.D. in nutrition science, and I have a Th.D. in early Christianity. But what got me, I guess, to do the Cogwriter was actually somebody found out that I had written a little bit. And back then, I wasn't really much of a writer. We're going back 28 years,
so
or maybe even 30 years.
So when you were 18, right?
Say again?
When you were 18, right?
No. Technically, I guess I'm past retirement age. Anyway, having said that,
mm-hmm.
Somebody wanted me to do that. And then the other thing was I started to do it. And then what happened was my wife and I were in Italy one of the times, and we were at the Vatican. We went over to St. Peter's, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I've been studying a lot of prophecy. I think certain things are going to affect Rome, the city of seven hills. It's mentioned in the Bible a couple of different places. And I said, but the people here won't care about any of that stuff because they look at church history. So that's why I went back to school, did the Th.D. thing, to get the degree in early Christianity. And so basically put all that together. And since then, I've written different books, including one that you don't even know about, one on the new Pope. That one's already out. But I actually first did your show back in 2009. I wrote a book called 2012 and the Rise of the Secret Sect. And in it, I warned that the world was not going to end in December of 2012, by the way. But, of course, everybody else says that's kind of common sense, I guess. But I think at least another 30 other things I said going to happen. And so I've been writing prophetic-related books since. I wrote one on Donald Trump that came out in January 2017. And I think almost 24 things I said in the book that he was going to do or not going to do happened. And now we've got the latest one that came out in January of 2025. And since then, depending how you count it, 10 or 12 things that I said were going to happen or start to happen have started to happen since that particular book came out.
Well, what were the things that you said about Donald Trump that actually came to pass?
Well, for example, with the first book, the first time, I said that he was going to get the Germans to want to rearm. And shortly thereafter, they did. They had various meetings. And I also said he'd get the Europeans to want to arm. And now what's interesting is within the first year of his presidency, the Europeans got something together called PESCO. Now, seems like nobody in the world's ever heard of PESCO. It stands for Permanent Structured Cooperation. And this is one of these things the European Union had on the books, but didn't actually have. It was like, okay, this is something we could do. But because Trump became president and made various comments that offended them, I realize in Canada, you're used to the president, or the U.S. president, making offensive comments. But he offended a lot of people in Europe. And so he actually got nations together to be in PESCO. And I think it's now 25 of the 27 nations in the European Union are part of PESCO. So that was something. And the other stuff, for example, now this next one, somebody said, well, anybody could have said this one. I wrote that the price of gold would hit records in U.S. dollar terms. And now that's happened so many times since my book came out in January. I don't even know the last time it hit a record. It was probably a couple of days ago. So that's kind of an obvious one, I suppose. Perhaps less obvious is that I said that I believe that his trade policies would lead to nations getting mad at the United States and basically saying, wait a second, if the United States is going to not be a great trading partner, we ought to look elsewhere. And so that's been happening actually pretty extensively. The morning after he was elected, I wrote down at the cogwriter.com website that you mentioned, I put down that I believed that this would get the European Union to push what's called the Mercosur agreement. This is an agreement with several nations in South America. It's been called perhaps the largest trade deal in history. I think that's an exaggeration. But within a month of me, actually a month after I wrote down that I thought that's what happened, that actually did happen. The European Union tentatively approved the Mercosur agreement so they can trade more with South America. Now, I think they still have a couple of other hoops they have to jump through. But the more Donald Trump says things against the European Union, like this week, your listeners may know that he's touting a deal with China, which basically is that they're going to delay some of the tariffs for 90 days or something. But then he said that dealing with China is fine, but the European Union is nastier, more difficult, and all this kind of stuff. And that type of rhetoric is upsetting the people in the European Union, particularly the leadership.
Sure.
Now, this year, Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, she went to India. Why? To promote a trade deal they've been setting on for like 6 or 7 years. And so they're trying to get that together. They've also made a deal with some of the Central Asian countries, and they're also looking at making a deal with what they call the ASEAN countries, which are basically Thailand and that part of the Cambodia and such over there. So this is something that I did predict would occur. And one of the reasons that the new book is called Donald Trump, Unintended Consequences in Donald Trump's Presidency, and this is what sounds strange, with Donald Trump, and this is funny because I ran across this reaction in Europe, as well as in the United States, and with some Canadians for that matter. With Donald Trump, you tend to get two different reactions from people. He's the worst thing that ever was. What a disaster. He's chaos. He's a liar. He's fraud and all this kind of stuff. And he's destroying the world, the country, or whatever. Or you get, he's the great savior. He's a great one. We're so glad we have him. He's standing up. He's doing all kinds of stuff. Okay? At risk of offending both sides. Not everything Donald Trump is going to do is good, and not everything Donald Trump is going to do is bad. All right? But the reality is there are going to be a lot of unintended consequences of his presidency. And one of them is, in my opinion, he's setting up the world for the European Union to more dominate trade than it currently does. That's my biblical perspective on that, is because there's prophecies about Mystery Babylon, the Great Rising Up. But from a secular perspective, when Donald Trump's making these different threats against Europe, I mentioned Ursula von der Leyen. So she goes out and says something like, my phone's ringing off the hook 24 hours a day because all these countries want to make a deal with us. Sounds a little bit like Donald Trump.
Exactly. Maybe they're calling each other all the time. Who knows?
Probably not. But she said something else that I think a lot of people didn't catch. Okay. She said there's 150 million more people who want to be part, or in countries that want to be part of the European Union. Okay. Well, they already have 450 million people. All right. So you add all up, you're talking about 600 million people. Now, whether they'll all get in or not, because I think she's including Turkey. All right. But they're talking over 500 million people with a per capita income close to the United States. So the total size of the European economy is actually larger than the United States. And what's happening now, I understand some of the rationale behind Donald Trump's negotiating tactics. And in one respect, I do agree, by the way, with him that the United States has lost a lot of manufacturing and should have more manufacturing. I think that's right. I don't agree with how he's going about it.
Now stand by. We've got to take a break here. Fascinating conversation. I don't agree with you on a lot of what you said about Donald Trump. I do think he is the Antichrist. I sincerely do, and I think that he's going to be the destruction of humanity and the human race as we know it. We'll be back on the other side of this break as the X Zone continues, right here from our station in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, the X Zone Broadcast Network, and of course, your hometown radio, Classic 1220 CFAJ. Welcome back, everyone. This is the X, and I'm Rob McConnell. Dr. Bob Thiel is our special guest, cogwriter.com. And Bob, like I was saying before, I think that I have no use for Donald Trump. I think that he is a criminal that is in the White House. I think he's surrounded by henchmen who have nothing better to do than to line their own pockets for after they leave Washington. I think a president that has no regard for the Constitution or the letter of law, who likes to make things up as he goes along, should be impeached. I think that Donald Trump is a risk to global security, global peace, and his comments about Canada, about our Prime Minister, about wanting to take over the Panama Canal, wanting to take over a sovereign nation like Greenland, and then to move all the people from Gaza into Arabia so he can open up Trumpland 101 on the Mediterranean. The guy is an idiot. He's a mental retard, and I don't even classify him as a human being.
Well, in terms of the Greenland situation, in my book, by the way, I mentioned it. I consider Donald Trump to be a bully. For the break, you made a comment. You thought that you consider Donald Trump the Antichrist.
And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Because I think that he's the Antichrist, and the four horsemen of the apocalypse are Putin, the leader of China, the leader of North Korea, and Elon Musk.
All right. Well, biblically, I wouldn't agree with you on that, but
your opinion. You're entitled to your opinion.
Well, as far as it's funny though that you mentioned the Antichrist thing because I didn't know you were going to. If you don't mind, I'm going to read you the title of Chapter 5 of my book, Unintended Consequences.
I'm going to send you a bill for all this self-promoting you're doing, Bob.
Anyway, is Donald Trump the Antichrist? So I have an entire chapter about that. Okay. And basically, one of the things on the Antichrist is that there's been, in popular understanding, there's a misnomer that the Antichrist is going to be primarily a political leader. But if you actually look at the scriptures, the only scriptures in the Bible that mention the term Antichrist or Antichrists, plural, the words in there, those words are in there a total of 5 times in 4 scriptures in total. They're all talking about a religious leader. And while I do not believe that Donald Trump is a true Christian, amongst other things, he said he never repented, and you can't be a Christian if you don't, according to the Bible.
Yeah. I
don't believe he is the final Antichrist. Now, but getting to your bigger point that you were making before the break in terms of destruction, is he doing things that will end up causing the United States ultimately to be destroyed? The answer is yes. Okay.
Right.
But again, one of the ways we differ is that I believe a lot of these things are unintended consequences on his part.
Whoa! Okay. How can you say that with a straight face? Because
he doesn't know what he's talking
about.
Then
why is he the president of the United States? The guy's got mental issues. Like he used to make fun about President Biden. He's worse than Biden ever is. And the worst part is this guy has the capability of pushing the nuclear button. Now, come on.
Okay, first of all, because I don't vote, I didn't vote for him or Biden, but apparently people who do vote in the United States, most of them voted for Donald Trump.
They drink
He's
a lot, yeah.
Because he got more votes than anybody else who was running, and he won the Electoral College.
Because he lied. He told the people that he was going to decrease prices. He was going to do a lot of things. And he's done the exact opposite to what he said he was going to do, except round up poor people who came to America because Joe Biden opened up the southern gates for a better life. And now he's just surrounding them, and he's sending them to Syria. He's sending them to Rwanda. He's sending them to, where else? El Salvador. The guy is loony. And the polls are showing that if the people knew what he was doing now, he would never have gotten into power.
Well, but he is the president.
For how long? I don't know. Kennedy did a hell of a lot less than Trump ever did, and they got rid of Kennedy.
Yeah, I read some of the releases on that definitely suggest CIA involvement.
They got rid of Lincoln.
That was true.
Yeah. So things come in threes.
Well, it depends how you count them. We lost Bobby Kennedy when I was growing up.
Yeah, but he was
Martin Luther King. When
yeah,
I
but
was
they weren't
growing up.
presidents.
True.
You know, the biggest three I believe in is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost.
Okay.
You know, so when it comes to Trump, the people who voted him in, like I said, if they knew then what they know now, they wouldn't have put him into power. Like, you know, he has no use for the Constitution. He doesn't abide by court orders. He takes what is a $40 or $400 million plane that he's going to allow to be Air Force One, and when he leaves the office, he takes the plane with him. Now, come on, the guy has no business being in politics. How many people has he put out of jobs? How much money is he costing the American economy? He says he's bringing all this money in. He's never named one of the $1 trillion deals that he's allegedly brought on board. You know, the only deal that we know out of all the countries that he said are lined up are two. China, of all countries, because he's scared shitless of them. And then, let me see, where else? The United Kingdom. Oh, and now he's signing stuff with the Middle East.
Right.
The guy
he signed a deal with Qatar.
Yeah.
And I believe one with Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, that's why, like I said, the Middle East. You know, but the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. You know, it's a sad case of what's happening in the United States. And, you know, I've lost all respect for the United States. All respect. If I had my way, we'd have a wall across Canada keeping the Americans out. You know? But
Well, I think that would be pretty damaging to the Canadian economy, at least in the short run.
we don't need the United States, and he's going to learn that. We've got other trading partners. The United States isn't the only card in the deck, as he likes to use the analogy of cards.
Oh, no, the United States is not. But again, there would be a transitional time before Canada would be able to make up for its exports here. But I presume that calmer heads will prevail, and there will be some deal between the United States and Canada at some point in time.
I agree that calmer and cooler heads will prevail. That's why we'll have to wait until Trump is out of the office.
I don't think the Canadian economy could last that long. Without a problem.
I beg to differ with you on that one. I beg to differ.
I didn't say you couldn't last at all. I think you'd have problems based on my understanding of the exports and the export patterns that Canada currently has.
We have problems now, Bob. We have problems now. You've got a president who signed an agreement of free trade that he is saying, well, no, we're going to change things now. You know, he's the one who started the tariff war.
I definitely with Canada he did, yes.
And Mexico. You know, and to use the excuse of fentanyl coming in from Canada, that was just a bunch of bunk in order that he could actually get the tariffs in place. The guy's a liar, a scammer, a crook. Ask me how I really feel about him. You know, it's sad. It's sad. We have a lot of good friends in the United States. There's a lot of good people there. I don't know how many emails we've gotten from people in the United States, you know, saying, hey, don't hate us. You know, we don't like what's going on either. How many border towns are suffering on both sides of the what he calls the imaginary line separating our two countries? Americans are suffering. Canadians are suffering. You know, it's not going to be, well, you know, Mr. Trump, who's, in my opinion, lining his pockets for days when he's not planning on being the president for the rest of his life. Will it get better, Bob? I hope so. I really do. I really do. But I think that he's barking up the wrong tree with this hard-fisted thing. We're not real estate. We're countries. And even his real estate business wasn't that good with all the bankruptcies. So I don't know. You know, how many criminal convictions does he have as a felon? 34?
In all due respect, those particular ones, and you're going to consider me a defender of him, but those particular ones were, from my limited understanding of U.S. law, questionable at best.
But he was found guilty.
That being said, I do not agree with his bankruptcy policies and what he's done. I've written against that multiple times, and I've done that since 2015, I think, or 2016. Okay, so I'm not defending him. The felony convictions were not in accordance with normal U.S. law. I'll just leave it at that. That being said, he does have a problem with the truth, and he goes out and he makes promises he can't keep, such as he'll solve the Russia-Ukraine war within 24 hours.
Oh, you mean that war is still going on? Wow, I thought it was going to be done the first day he was in office. I must have missed that one.
Now, you know full well, just like I did, he said this and it wasn't true. And he says other things, and he shouldn't say things. People should not bear false witness. He claims to be a Christian. I told you, I don't think he is.
Right.
I'm sure he's not. And he doesn't seem to have a problem with negotiating the way he does and functioning like a bully. Okay. I'd had to deal with bullies growing up. I don't respect them. And I don't think he should act like a bully. I do think that there is a place to negotiate tough, but to intentionally offend people with some of the language, I don't understand why he does that. Maybe sometimes I think part of it's because he likes to be all over the media all the time. I think that strokes his ego. But I think it's wrong. He should never bear false witness.
He's just
On
like,
the other hand,
he's just
some
like
of his critics say things about him that's not true either, and I would like to see both sides always tell the truth.
You know, it's just like he's the Barnum and Bailey of the world of politics. He's a showman.
He has become a showman, and interestingly, he's learned how to get his message across. And I heard a couple of people talking about him.
We've got to take another break here, Bob. Please stand by. Exonation, Dr. Bob Thiel is our guest. www.cogwriter.com, and we'll both be back on the other side of this break as we continue from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. And you're listening to us on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and your hometown radio, Classic 1220 CFAJ, streaming at classic1220.ca.
If you were faced with him in all his glory, what would you ask if you had just one question?
Welcome back, everyone. Dr. Bob Thiel is our very special guest this hour, www.cogwriter.com. Bob, just imagine this. Do you remember how he treated the president of, where was he from? Oh, come on.
Ukraine?
Yeah, the Ukraine. You know, because he wasn't wearing a suit and he thought it was disrespectful, and a whole bunch of other reasons why he and his bum buddy, the vice president, could actually disgrace somebody while the international media is watching. Imagine this. Dark clouds form over the White House. Thunder, lightning. Day turns into night. The clouds open up, and Jesus Christ descends from the clouds, right to the front door of the White House. Jesus knocks on the door, and he's wearing Jesus clothes, right? Sandals, long hair, beard. And says to the Secret Service, "Hi, I'm JC. I'd like to see DT, please." And the Secret Service go in and see the president and say, "Mr. President, Jesus Christ is here to see you." And the president says, "Well, bring him in." as soon as all the press is here. So he gets all the press corps in, and they make that little U-turn, that semicircle. And Jesus walks in. And, of course, long hair, beard, clothes that he wore in the day, sandals. What do you think Donald Trump would say to Jesus about the way he was dressed?
Well, three things. First of all, according to most scholars, Jesus didn't really have long hair, so we'll skip that one. Second, when you're talking about the deal with Vladimir Zelensky, it was actually J.D. Vance who I think objected to the clothing. I don't think it was Donald Trump.
Oh yeah, but
that said, I don't believe Donald Trump knows enough about what Jesus taught to. I don't know that he would. I don't believe he would recognize Jesus of the Bible. As far as what would you say to him? I don't know. He would probably try to promote some position for himself, would be my guess.
Yeah. Either that or get into an argument with him like he did with the president of the Ukraine. I just find him ridiculous, and there are so many social media platforms that's all they do is have his picture and this, that, and the other thing. I don't bother with them anymore. Whenever I see him on TV, I change the channel. But he's your president, and as such, he should be treated with due respect. After all, he is the leader of some of the nicest people I've ever had the pleasure of knowing, including you, Bob.
Well, thank you so much. But what he's doing is, I'm going to paraphrase something from the Book of Lamentations. The first couple of verses says, "The nation that which was great among the nations, the nation that was great, is going to be betrayed by friends," because basically it turns friends into enemies. And that's what Donald Trump is doing. Okay? Until Donald Trump was in office, I never thought there was any compunction about anything between the United States and Canada. I lived reasonably close to the border. I had relatives who actually had houses in both sides, the Michigan side and the Ontario side. I remember going to their house in Ontario. I've been to Canada multiple times.
I agree with you 100%, Bob. I agree with you 100%. In fact, according to the CBSA, which is the Canadian Border Customs Service, CBSA? Anyway, they're saying, as well as the U.S. Border Patrol, that traffic into the U.S. from Canada is down nearly 60%.
I saw those stats, yes.
Airlines are suffering. Cruises are suffering. All because of one person who wants to play God. And in my book, that position's already taken.
Well, certainly God's on his throne. As far as Donald Trump goes, though, he has certain ideas. I've tried to kind of look at him in a kind of more of a historical perspective.
Okay.
And one of the thoughts that I've had, and I've actually never said this out loud, so this will be the first time, is when I've looked at the ancient Roman Empire, while it was in decline, every now and then somebody rose up and tried to do something different. Some of them made it worse. Some of it made it better, if you will, because it would last a little bit longer. And my suspicion, and I've never talked to Donald Trump, so I've got to just speculate. My suspicion is he sees himself potentially as a great one for the United States. For example, should the United States end up with Canada?
It won't. It won't.
Commenting.
Get that out of your...
I'm talking about in his mind. Think about this. The United States has not had any territorial gain in my lifetime. Okay.
Well, what about Alaska?
That's not quite true.
Alaska
and Hawaii became states while I was alive,
right,
but
there
they were already there. But no massive change. And the same thing would be with Greenland. And of course, the thing with Greenland, which is embarrassing, by the way, and you probably know this, but the United States already has a treaty with Greenland.
Yep.
And I forgot it was from the Danish people or the Greenlander people. They said, look, the United States, basically, they were nicer than I'm going to be. You idiots. You had thousands and thousands of people over here on Greenland. You
Yep.
reduced it. We didn't tell you to cut them down. You can bring them back.
That's
What
right.
is it? What is this massive security need that our current agreement doesn't fulfill?
Well,
Okay?
that's just
What
like
have we done? What have we done wrong to you? And the answer was nothing, as far as I can tell.
yeah.
And so again, I believe he acts like a bully, and that was one of the things that I wrote in my book, specifically about the whole Greenland thing. But I think Donald Trump sees himself as somebody who will be, in his mind, in the history books, as a great one who did great things. Okay, and I believe that's what he thinks. I've watched him before. As far as my history of Donald Trump, if you don't mind, I'll talk about
Sure.
that. First, I've never met the guy, but I had heard of him as a business person,
Mm-hmm.
and I was actually vice president of a company that invented sprinklers. They invented them in 1912. I wasn't there back then, and they actually got their sprinklers on the front cover of some irrigation magazine because they were in the Taj Mahal, not the one in India, but the one in New Jersey. So I was in New Jersey to see one of our largest customers or accounts, and so I intentionally took a side detour to go into the Taj Mahal just because, okay, it's kind of famous, and then not too long after I was there, I think within a year, Donald Trump went bankrupt. So I didn't like that. Then one year, my wife decided that we should watch a season of Celebrity Apprentice.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever seen that, Rob?
I watched it for about 30 seconds, and that was the extent of it.
Okay. Well, I was doomed to watch a season. Okay? And I didn't know much about Donald Trump. And first of all, I've done a fair amount of TV interviews for the news, et cetera, right? And I know that you say a lot of things get cut out. So I'm sure that on shows like these reality shows like Celebrity Apprentice, there are things that are happening in the background that we never see as the audience. But repeatedly, Donald Trump would make decisions on that program that I just shook my head. I don't understand. How can a business person do this? Okay, I was a professional manager. I was vice president, I think, at that time, or at least a business owner at the time, and I couldn't understand it. So when he announced he was going to run for president, I had concerns about his decision-making process, and I still do. And look, he knows how to gain publicity. I don't think publicity at any cost is worth it. Okay? I think you have to have integrity, and I think that's much more important than publicity.
I think the publicity he's bringing to the White House is the wrong type of publicity. And with what he's trying to do, I don't know, Bob. If anybody would have ever told me 10 years ago what was going on in the United States today, I would have told them, hey, come on. You're talking about the greatest nation on the face of the earth at this time. And I wonder how he would have, and I mean Donald Trump, would have handled the Osama bin Laden issue. I could just hear him every day in front of the camera saying, well, we know where he is, but I'm not going to tell you because if I tell you, you might tell him. And we've got our troops right outside the door. And, Pete Hegseth, get onto your signal and let everybody know what's going on. It's just sheer stupidity. And I don't know how anyone can look up and respect a man as the President of the United States with all his, with just being Donald Trump.
Well, in his mind, I mean, he keeps saying that since he's come in the office, the United States has gained more respect around the world. I would not call it respect. I would say that he's shaken a lot of countries.
Mm-hmm.
He's upset a lot of countries. Some of them are going to cut deals that they didn't want to have to cut, but I don't think it's because of respect. Okay, but he's pointed that he believes he's brought respect in. But you made a comment about the United States being the greatest country right now, and that's why I told you earlier, I referred to Lamentations chapter 1, talking about the fact a great nation is going to be having friends that become enemies. And he has helped to fulfill that. And that, as I mentioned, is an unintended consequence, in my view, of his presidency. He's got many unintended consequences, but that's perhaps the biggest one. And I believe it will lead ultimately to World War III.
You know what, my friend? I agree with you. I truly do. And that scares the hell out of me. Because, like I said before, you've got a man like Donald Trump who has access to that button. If he gets ticked off at somebody, and they're not going to lick his boots like so many other people do, he's just going to push that button without thinking about his actions. It's going to be a sad day for planet Earth.
I don't believe he's going to do that, but I do believe he's helping set up the stage for a nuclear war. But I don't believe he's going to push the button.
All right, stand by, my friend. We've got to take our final break. And X-Zone Nation, Dr. Bob Thiel is my special guest this hour. Great talking to you, Bob. I appreciate the work that you do, by the way, my friend. And we'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X-Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, president of the Donald Trump fan club here in Canada. Not. And you're listening to us on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, and your hometown radio, Classic 1220, CFAJ AM, coming to you from their studios throughout Ontario, the northern part of the United States, the northern part of the state of Pennsylvania, on AM 1220 CFAJ, streaming classic1220.ca.
Oh, you've been filling my cup till I'm running over with joy from your heaven-sent love. Just touch me again. I'm king of all men and reign in front.
How do I get through one night without you? If I had to live without you, what kind of life would that be? Oh, and I need you in my arms, need you to hold. You're my world, my heart, my soul. If you ever leave, baby, you would take away everything good and
I'm just reading here one of the feeds that we get here in the X-Zone, and this is from a U.S. member of Congress, a Republican. And he says, the billionaire president who is running multiple businesses while he's in office and trying to cut Medicaid from struggling Americans cries about how his plane isn't good enough anymore. He needs more taxpayer dollars to make it better. It's estimated it would cost $1 billion in taxpayer money to retrofit the airplane that he wants to take as a gift from Qatar. The corruption and greed are unbelievable. Wow. From a Republican, no less. The times are changing. The times are changing. Dr. Bob is our special guest, www.cogwriter.com. And Bob, where do we take it from here? You know,
Well, as I was saying before,
Mhm.
Donald Trump has certain ideas, and right now he's got a lot of people around him who are yes men. And I've worked for bigger companies than I'm currently at now, and I've seen that happen a lot. And in Donald Trump's case, it's pretty obvious. You kind of have to know the get-go. The problem with that is you get an echo chamber. So people will not have the guts to tell him that he's not right. And that's another problem that he's facing. And so he's doing a lot of things that he thinks or he hopes are going to be good. But again, there's a lot of unintended consequences. He's getting the Europeans to arm. He's getting people to turn against him. He's getting people to turn against the United States, try to figure out how to get around the United States. What's kind of funny, you talk about Republicans. When I did my first Donald Trump book, I had in it 20 reasons why Donald Trump was apocalyptic. And we went through those. And I was on a radio program out of Louisiana. And the person who was the host said to me that he was a delegate to the Republican National Convention the prior year, and he voted Donald Trump in. He cast a ballot for Donald Trump to run for president as a Republican candidate. And he said he looked through my list. He said, but I was wrong on one particular point. And I said, no, I'm not. That particular point was, I said the amount of debt, official debt the United States had was going to increase under Donald Trump. Now, this man from Louisiana was a Republican, and he was of the opinion that Donald Trump got in, the deficit would go away or go down anyway, and then our total debt would drop. But instead, it went up. I think it was 8 trillion approximately. I should look the number up. I've got it on my website. During his office, during his time in office the first time. And I told that person, no, Donald Trump is not changing the trajectory of the debt. The debt is going to keep rising. And in current news, they're talking about some other bill, some great bill that they're talking about out there. And I'm not going to go through the specifics of it because I haven't read it, but I will say one thing. The official debt of the United States will continue to rise. And there's a prophecy, by the way, 2,600 years ago from a guy by the name Habakkuk that talked about essentially putting pledges out there, which I would call treasury bills, and this being a problem for the end. Now, you mentioned nuclear before.
Yes.
The Bible talks about something that sounds like nuclear destruction. The Hopi Indians have some prophecies that sound like nuclear destruction. There's some other prophecies from different cultures out there, which I think are supportive of the idea. I do believe, sadly, that is going to happen, but while Donald Trump might at some point in time actually use a nuke someplace, I'm not saying he would never do that. I don't believe he's going to actually launch a zillion of them to start World War III, but I do believe that because of his policies, statements, and some other things he's done, he's going to encourage others to ultimately turn against the United States, which I believe is consistent with biblical prophecies, Greco-Roman Catholic prophecies, and various other ones from different other cultures.
I just thought of something, Bob. As we know, war creates jobs and money, right?
Well, that's phony because that's what people think. But what it really does is it takes productive effort. Instead of having productive effort, it goes to unproductive effort because we could take the same people and do something useful, clean up the environment, improve the food supply.
Yeah, okay. If we're talking about a sane person, I agree. But we're talking about Donald Trump here. Okay?
Well, I'm trying to be sane. Thank you.
No, you are sane. You are. Hey, Bob, I've never said any but nice things about you in front of you or behind you. So,
thank you very much, Rob.
But, a war would bring a lot of jobs to the American people, wouldn't it?
Well, I think what he's trying to do instead is he's making deals to sell more arms to Saudi Arabia. I think that was one of the things that he did this week. And he wants to sell more American arms other places as well. So I think he's more hopeful that he'll be able to increase the amount of jobs through selling the arms as opposed to actually going to physical conflict.
I am very proud of the Canadian government. We canceled our order for the F-15s or F-35s or whatever they were. We canceled the order.
And in Europe, by the way, they're doing the same kind of thing. The president or the CEO of Volkswagen a few weeks back said, look, we used to make weapons in World War II.
Yep.
We're having a problem now, exporting our cars to places like the United States, we think. We could tool up and we can make the weapons here. The Europeans just agreed to a program called Rearm Europe, where they're supposedly going to commit 800 billion euros to more armaments. And they've also want to eliminate what's called the debt break for the European Union countries so they can actually spend more there. So one of the unintended consequences of Donald Trump's actions is Europeans saying, all right, you say we have to spend more on our military. We're going to, but we don't have to buy from you.
Yep.
That was never that's not part of the deal. We've got the Large Hadron Collider, the biggest physics project in the world.
Right.
We've got the Fair Accelerator. We've got other projects, technology we're working on, by the way, you Americans aren't really part of. And we're going to do this because why should we support your economy if you're not going to let us export like we want to. Again, I call that another unintended consequence of his statements and actions. You know, from a carnal perspective, by the way, when he was president the first time, he was correct that from a contribution perspective, it made little sense. The United States spent more than all the other NATO countries did together times about 3. Now it's about times about 2. But you don't realize is when you get people to spend their money, they're going to spend it on themselves for what they want. And he hasn't figured that out. And again, he professes to be some type of a Christian. I don't believe he knows biblical prophecy. And because if he did, I don't think he would be doing many of the things that he's doing.
You know, I just gave myself an idea. I think, you know, that scenario I gave you with Jesus coming down to the clouds and going to the... I think I'm going to send that to Saturday Night Live later. Yeah, that'd be a great skit for them. Yeah. There's something wrong with the entire system. There truly is. I can't forgive him for what happened on January the 6th with the attempted insurrection of the United States and the throwing of the election. I'm very proud of Mike Pence for sticking up and maintaining and sticking to the letter of the law and the Constitution and the Electoral College. To have those insurrectionists who damaged property, assaulted people, injured, made a mockery or tried to make a mockery of democracy. They were tried, judged, found guilty, incarcerated, and one of the first things that Trump does, commutes a sentence or gives them presidential pardons. What bloody message does this give to the world of criminals? And he's very interested in getting the Mexicans out of the United States, but he's now letting white Africans in from South Africa. So it seems that he's a racist as well. The guy has no business in politics. Money bought him that title. His Elon Musk fronted him, bought the election. It's just a crying shame. And to see what was once the great country of the United States being brought down to a Chicago-type mobster-run country, it's really sad. It's really sad.
Well, in terms of the South Africans, if you don't mind me interjecting,
No,
I do
not at
know
all.
people in South Africa who do believe that they are facing various forms of threats to their livelihood in life.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, as far as the system goes, understand that, I said, people in our church don't vote. We consider ourselves ambassadors to this world. We believe the only real solution is the kingdom of God. All right, we're watching this. We're looking at biblical prophecies, and with someone like Donald Trump, because of his timing and things he's said and things that he's done, we believe he's essentially accelerating certain end time events. So that's what we see when we see him. As I said before,
Yeah.
he's admitted he's never repented. He's not a Christian. He doesn't seem to have any compunction about lying. Okay, so you know we're not in any way defending him on that.
Right.
I do think I think much of the time he does think he's doing the right thing for the country, and because I believe he's got more of an echo chamber for advisors, a lot of people are afraid to stand up to him. I had been appointed an advisor at my last church to the head people on doctrine and prophecy, and the head guy made me promise that I would tell him anytime he was pulling punches. I didn't want to do that. But over the years, he finally didn't like me to actually tell him what he made me promise.
Yeah.
Okay? And I say that, and he was a religious guy. Okay? Donald Trump's not. So there's no way there's anybody like me in his close inner circles, because I would tell him, you shouldn't be a bully, shouldn't lie, shouldn't do this, whatever. But he doesn't have people. He doesn't have people who tell him that. If so, they won't be around very long.
Bob, I hate to do
And-
this, but the hour is up, my friend. Listen, come back and join us again, would you, Bob? I thoroughly enjoyed this hour.
Thanks again for having me, Rob.
You take care of yourself. Now, at X Zone Nation, thank you for tuning into this hour of the X Zone Radio Show and for the opportunity to hear from Dr. Bob Thiel, his insights on biblical prophecy, the importance of maintaining spiritual health, and his unique perspective on the challenging times that we face here in this modern world of ours. Now, to explore more of Dr. Thiel's work, be sure to visit his website, cogwriter.com. But until then, X Zone Nation, I'm going to be back in an hour. I should say I'm going to be back in our next hour after we come back from this very short break as the X Zone continues. Whatever you do, don't go away. I'm Rob McConnell, and who knows what's going to happen tomorrow. We'll be back. Don't go away.